Ambassador Velitra had lived for 300 years. In all that time, she had never sent a distress call. Her species, the Sonari, were peaceful beings. They glowed with soft blue and purple light that came from their skin. They solved problems with words, not weapons. They believed that patience and kindness could fix anything. But the Krath Dominion did not believe in kindness. They did not believe in patience. They believed in one thing only, taking everything they wanted. The first Krath ships appeared in Sonari space on a quiet morning. Velitra remembered standing at her window, watching the sunrise paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. It was beautiful. It was peaceful. It was the last peaceful moment she would have for a very long time. The Krath harvesters came down like a swarm of hungry insects. They were massive ships, each one the size of a small city. Their hulls were black and covered with strange machines that glowed with angry red light. These machines did terrible things. They sucked up entire forests in minutes. They drained lakes and rivers dry. They pulled minerals from the ground so fast that the earth cracked and split open. The Sonari had no army. They had never needed one. They tried to talk to the Krath, to reason with them, to offer them trade agreements and friendship. The Krath laughed at them. Their leader, a massive creature named Vorak the Endless, sent back a simple message. We do not negotiate. We take. Run if you want. It makes no difference. Within 3 days, 2 of the 5 major cities on Sonari Prime were gone. Not destroyed in the usual sense. They were simply harvested. The buildings were broken down into raw materials. The trees and plants were processed into fuel. Even the water was collected and stored in the Krath ships. Millions of Sonari fled to the remaining cities. They huddled together in fear, their soft glow dimming as hope left their hearts. The council met in emergency session, but no one knew what to do. How could a species that had never fought defend itself against the greatest predators in the galaxy? Velitra stood before the council with tears streaming down her face. Her glow had faded to almost nothing. We must call for help, she said. The Galactic Union has protocols for this. Other species are supposed to come to our aid. The eldest council member, a being so old that his light had turned silver with age, shook his head slowly. The Union has never enforced those protocols, not once in 5,000 years. The strong do what they want. The weak suffer what they must. This has always been the way. Then we will die doing nothing, Velitra demanded. We will let our children be harvested like crops. The chamber fell silent. Outside, another city burned. Send the signal, the eldest finally said. Send it to everyone. If no one answers, at least we will know that we tried. Velitra activated the emergency beacon herself. It was an old system, installed centuries ago when the Sonari first joined the Galactic Union. The signal went out in all directions, carrying a simple message. We are the Sonari Collective. We are under attack by the Krath Dominion. Our people are dying. Please help us. The responses came quickly. The Vellani, a species known for their beautiful art and advanced technology, sent a message of sympathy. They explained that they had a non-aggression treaty with the Krath and could not interfere. They wished the Sonari the best of luck. The Mindari, spiritual beings who existed partly in another dimension, offered prayers and meditation techniques to help the Sonari find peace in their final moments. They did not offer ships or soldiers. The Crystalline Accord, a federation of 12 species, promised to discuss the matter at their next summit meeting. That meeting was scheduled for 6 months from now. One by one, every major power in the galaxy found a reason to look away. The Krath were too strong. The distance was too great. The risk was too high. The Sonari were not important enough. Velitra felt her hope dying. She sat alone in her office, watching the emergency beacon blink uselessly. Outside her window, she could see Krath harvesters working on the horizon, moving slowly but steadily toward the last remaining cities. Then, 17 hours after the signal went out, a new response arrived. It came from Sector 7G, a region of space that most species avoided. The charts labeled it with warning symbols. The databases contained notes that said things like dangerous and unpredictable and do not approach. The message was short. It contained none of the flowery language that other species used. There were no expressions of sympathy, no explanations of why they could not help, no empty promises. Just 12 words in a harsh, direct language that Velitra's translators struggled to process. Hold position. Evacuate civilians to safe zones. Fleet inbound. Arrival in 72 hours? Velitra stared at the message. Her assistant, a young Sonari named Trill, rushed into the room with his skin flashing in patterns of confusion and fear. Ambassador, we have identified the source of that transmission. It comes from the Sol system. Sector 7G? I do not know that system, Velitra said. Trill's glow turned pale, almost white. It was the color of terror. It is a death world ambassador. The third planet from their star? They call it Earth. Velitra felt her blood run cold. Everyone in the galaxy knew about death worlds. They were planets so hostile, so violent, so dangerous that intelligent life should never be able to evolve there. The gravity was crushing. The weather was deadly. The other creatures on these worlds spent every moment trying to kill each other. No civilized species came from such places. That is impossible, Velitra whispered. No sentient beings can survive on a death world. These ones did, Trill said. They call themselves humans. They have been in space for only 200 years. Most species avoid them. The Union has not accepted their membership application. There are reports, rumors, stories about what they are capable of. What kind of stories? Trill looked at the floor. They are predators, ambassador, persistence hunters. They do not stop. They do not give up. They do not know when they are beaten. Their history is filled with war. They have been fighting each other since before they discovered fire. Velitra looked back at the message. Fleet inbound. Not a ship. Not a diplomatic team. A fleet. We asked for help, she said slowly, and we got the attention of Deathworlders. Through her window, another Sonari city fell to the Krath harvesters. Millions more lives lost. Millions more souls crying out for salvation. May the stars forgive us, Velitra whispered, for what we have invited into our home. But deep in her heart, beneath the fear and the uncertainty, something else began to glow. Something she had not felt since the Krath first arrived. Hope. Admiral Helena Vance stood on the bridge of the UN's Defiance and watched the stars stretch into lines of light. Faster-than-light travel always made her stomach feel strange, but she had learned to ignore it long ago. There were more important things to think about. Around her, 47 warships cut through the fabric of space. They were not pretty ships. They were not elegant or graceful like the vessels other species built. Human ships were ugly on purpose. They were covered in thick armor plates and bristling with weapons. They looked exactly like what they were. Machines built for war. Helena was 63 years old. She had gray hair that she kept short and practical. Her face was lined with scars from battles fought long before she became an admiral. Her eyes were dark brown and very tired, but they missed nothing. She had commanded ships for 40 years. She had seen things that would break most people. She was still standing. Admiral, her communications officer, called out. We are receiving transmissions from the Sonari government. They want to speak with you directly, Helena nodded. Put them through. A holographic image appeared in front of her. The alien was beautiful in a strange way. Her skin glowed with soft blue light, and her eyes were large and filled with tears. She looked fragile, like a creature made of glass and starlight. I am Ambassador Velitra of the Sonari Collective, the alien said. Her voice was musical, but shaking with fear. We are grateful for your response to our distress call, but I must ask. We expected perhaps a small peacekeeping force. A diplomatic team. Why have you brought so many warships? Helena looked at the alien for a long moment. She thought about how to explain. How do you tell someone from a peaceful world what humans were? How do you make them understand centuries of blood and fire and survival? Ambassador, Helena said, I have read everything we know about the Krath Dominion. They have destroyed 17 species. 17 entire civilizations wiped from existence. Not conquered, not enslaved, harvested, consumed, erased from history. The Sonari ambassador nodded slowly. Yes, this is why we are so afraid. There were no survivors from those 17 species, Helena continued. Not one. The Krath do not take prisoners. They do not accept surrender. They do not stop until everything is gone. I understand this. But surely there is a diplomatic solution. Perhaps if you spoke with them, offered them trade agreements, found common ground, ... Helena shook her head. Ambassador, the Krath have had 17 chances to show mercy. 17 chances to take something less than everything. They never did. Not once. Do you know what that tells me? The ambassador's glow flickered. What? It tells me they will not stop because we ask nicely. It tells me they will not stop because we make them a better offer. It tells me there is only one thing in this universe that will make them stop. And what is that? Helena's voice was flat and cold. Force. Overwhelming, undeniable force. The kind that breaks bones and burns ships and makes them understand that the cost of continuing is higher than the cost of leaving. The Sonari ambassador was silent for a long time. When she spoke again, her voice was barely a whisper. Is this how humans solve all their problems? Helena thought about the question. She thought about Earth's long history. The wars, the genocides, the empires that rose and fell. The millions who died for causes both noble and terrible. She thought about how humans had nearly destroyed themselves a dozen times before they finally learned to work together. No, she said honestly. We try other things first. Words, trade, compromise. We have learned over many centuries that peace is better than war. That building is better than destroying. That cooperation is better than conflict. Then why bring a war fleet? Helena looked out the window at the stars rushing past. Because we also learned something else. Something darker, but just as true. Some enemies cannot be reasoned with. Some threats cannot be negotiated away. And when you face such an enemy, when innocent lives hang in the balance, hesitation is not mercy. It is cowardice. She turned back to the hologram. Ambassador, I did not bring these ships because I want war. I brought them because I want to protect your people. And the only way to protect them is to make the Krath understand that attacking Sonari Prime was the worst mistake they ever made. The ambassador's glow shifted to a color. Helena's translator could not identify the other species in the Galactic Union. They all refused to help us. They sent sympathy and prayers, but no ships. Why are you different? Why did humans answer our call when no one else would? Helena was quiet for a moment. She thought about her grandmother, who had survived a terrible war when she was young. She thought about the stories the old woman used to tell, about how the world had stood by and watched while millions died, about the shame that haunted humanity for generations afterward. Because we know what it feels like to be alone, Helena finally said. We know what it feels like to cry for help and hear nothing but silence. Our history is full of moments when the strong preyed on the weak, and the rest of the world looked away because getting involved was too hard, or too dangerous, or too expensive. She paused, her jaw tightening. We decided as a species that we would not be the ones who look away. Not anymore. Not ever again. The Sonari ambassador bowed her head. Her glow brightened slightly. You would risk your lives for strangers. For a species you have never met? Helena smiled, but there was sadness in her eyes. Ambassador, that is what it means to be human. We break ourselves trying to fix things that are not our problem. We run toward danger when any sensible creature would run away. We fight for people we have never met and places we have never seen. She straightened her uniform and checked the tactical display. They would arrive at Sonari Prime in less than 12 hours. Some people call it foolish, she continued. Maybe they are right. But I would rather be a fool who tried than a coward who stood by and watched. The transmission ended. Helena stood alone on the bridge, watching her fleet tear through the darkness. Somewhere ahead, a peaceful world was dying. Somewhere ahead, monsters thought they were unstoppable. Helena Vance was going to show them just how wrong they were. Vorak the Endless sat upon his throne and watched the harvesting continue. His throne was made from the bones of conquered species, collected over centuries of conquest. Each bone told a story. Each skull was a trophy. He liked to run his claws over them while he watched worlds die. The Krath were ancient. They had been traveling the stars for 10,000 years, longer than most species had existed. In all that time, they had never lost a war. They had never been defeated. They had never found a species strong enough to stop them. Vorak was the greatest of all Krath commanders. His harvesters numbered in the thousands. His warriors were countless. He had personally overseen the destruction of 6 civilizations, and he planned to destroy many more before he died. The Sonari were easy prey, soft, weak, glowing like little lights in the darkness. They had no weapons, no army, no will to fight. Vorak almost felt disappointed. It was like hunting creatures that did not know how to run. Supreme Commander, his tactical officer, clicked. The Krath spoke with their mandibles, making sounds that were sharp and harsh. Our sensors have detected a fleet approaching from the outer system. Vorak did not look up from the bone he was examining. The Union would not dare interfere. They know better. Who are these fools? Unknown configuration, Supreme Commander. The ships are heavily armored. They are using propulsion systems we have not seen before. The officer paused. They come from the Sol system. They call themselves humans. Vorak searched his memory. Sol system. He had heard of it. A yellow star in an unremarkable part of the galaxy. The third planet was classified as a Category 7 death world. Extreme temperatures, deadly predators, poisonous atmosphere, constant natural disasters. A death world. Vorak laughed, and the sound echoed through the command chamber like breaking glass. No intelligent species comes from a death world. There must be an error in our database. The information is correct, Supreme Commander. The humans evolved on a planet with high gravity, extreme weather, and a biosphere designed for constant violence. They breathe a corrosive gas called oxygen. They survived by becoming predators themselves. This caught Vorak's attention. He finally looked up from his bone collection. Predators. Interesting. How many ships? 48 vessels. Small compared to our fleet, Vorak spread his mandibles in amusement. 48 ships against our thousands? They are either very brave or very stupid. Perhaps both. A new voice cut through the command chamber. It was harsh and flat, speaking in a language the translation system struggled to process. This is Admiral Helena Vance of the Terran Combined Fleet. Vorak turned to face the holographic display. A creature appeared before him. It stood on 2 legs like the Sonari, but there the similarity ended. This being had no glow. Its skin was a strange brownish color, covered in scars. Its eyes were small and dark, and they held no fear at all. Vorak had never seen eyes like that. Every species he conquered had fear in their eyes when they faced him. It was the natural response to meeting a superior predator. But this creature, this human, looked at him like he was nothing special. Like he was just another problem to be solved. You have exactly 1 hour to withdraw from Sonari space, the human continued. Refuse, and we will remove you ourselves. Vorak stared at the creature. Then he began to laugh. The sound built and built until the entire command chamber shook with it. His officers joined in, their mandibles clicking in cruel amusement. Little Deathworlder, Vorak said when he could speak again. You bring 48 ships against my thousands. Your bravery is admirable, but bravery is meaningless against superior numbers. Superior technology. Superior strength. The human's expression did not change. 52 minutes. I have destroyed 17 species, Vorak continued. 17 civilizations erased from existence. You are nothing but another entry in my collection. Another set of bones for my throne? 51 minutes? Vorak's amusement faded. He was not used to being interrupted. He was not used to creatures who did not beg or plead or try to bargain for their lives. Who do you think you are? He demanded. You are a young species. You have barely left your death world. You know nothing of war on this scale? For the first time, the human smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. It showed teeth, like a predator preparing to bite. We're wrong, Admiral, Vance said. We know everything about war. We have been practicing on each other since before we discovered fire. We fought wars over land and water and gold and ideas. We fought wars because our skins were different colors. We fought wars because we prayed to different gods. We fought wars because it was Tuesday and we had nothing better to do. She leaned forward slightly. You have destroyed 17 species in 10,000 years. We nearly destroyed ourselves a dozen times in just the last few centuries. You are old, Vorak, but we are dangerous. There is a difference. Vorak felt something he had not felt in a very long time, a cold sensation in his chest, a tightness in his throat. It took him a moment to recognize it. Fear. He crushed it immediately. He was Vorak the Endless. He did not feel fear. You think you can threaten me? He snarled. You think your little speeches will frighten the Krath? We have been the masters of this galaxy for 10,000 years. You are insects. You are prey. 49 minutes, the human said calmly. Use them wisely. The transmission ended. Vorak sat in silence for a long moment. His officers watched him nervously, waiting for orders. Prepare the fleet for combat, Vorak finally said. All ships. Every warrior. These Deathworlders want to fight. We will give them one they will never forget. As his officers rushed to obey, Vorak turned back to his throne of bones. Soon, he thought he would add human skulls to his collection. Soon, he would teach these arrogant Deathworlders what happened to species that dared to challenge the Krath. But deep in his mind, deeper than he would ever admit, that cold feeling remained. A tiny voice whispering a terrible question. What if they were right? What if the Krath had finally found an enemy they could not destroy? Vorak silenced the voice and prepared for war. The hour passed. The Krath did not leave. Admiral Helena Vance had not expected them to. All ships, she said into her communicator. Begin attack pattern Delta. Target their harvester vessels first. Make them pay for every inch of Sonari soil they have taken. The Terran fleet moved forward. 48 ships against thousands. By every measure of logic and reason, it should have been a slaughter. The Krath outnumbered them by more than 20-1. Their ships were larger, their fleet was more experienced, and they had never lost a battle in 10,000 years. But the Krath had never fought. Humans before. The first thing that confused them was how the human ships moved. Every civilized species in the galaxy used elegant formation flying. Ships moved together in perfect patterns, like dancers performing a beautiful routine. It was efficient. It was logical. It was predictable. The humans flew like chaos itself had taken physical form. Their ships scattered in every direction, weaving and spinning in patterns that seemed random. Krath targeting computers could not calculate their movements. By the time a Krath weapon locked onto a human ship, that ship was already somewhere else. Their formation makes no sense. The Krath tactical officer shouted, They are breaking every rule of space combat. Vorak watched the display with growing confusion. Then they will be easy to destroy. Send our fighter swarms. Overwhelm them with numbers. 1,000 Krath fighters launched from the harvester vessels. They moved as one, a perfect cloud of death that had consumed countless enemy fleets. They surrounded the human ships like a net closing around prey, and then something impossible happened. The human ships broadcast a signal. It was just a pulse of energy, nothing special by Krath standards. But when it hit the fighter swarm, chaos erupted. Krath fighters began attacking each other. Their communication systems went wild. Their targeting computers showed allies as enemies, and enemies as empty space. In seconds, the swarm destroyed itself. 1,000 fighters reduced to scrap metal by their own weapons. Electronic warfare, Admiral Vance said quietly, watching the destruction. We have been developing it for centuries. Against each other, of course. The real battle began. Human weapons were different from anything the Krath had seen. They were not elegant energy beams or precise laser systems. They were brutal, physical things. Massive cannons that fired solid metal projectiles at incredible speeds. Missiles that did not just explode, but broke into thousands of smaller missiles, each one seeking its own target. Krath armor was designed to deflect energy weapons. It had never been tested against kinetic impacts. The human projectiles punched through it like paper. How is this possible? Vorak screamed. Our shields should stop everything. Supreme Commander, his science officer replied, his voice shaking. The humans are not using energy weapons. They are throwing rocks at us. Very fast rocks. Our shields are not designed for this. Then ram them. Use our harvesters as weapons. Crush them with our mass. The Krath harvesters turned toward the human fleet. Each harvester was enormous, 1,000 times the size of a human warship. They accelerated toward the enemy, planning to simply smash them out of existence. The humans did not run. They did not even try to dodge. Instead, they accelerated toward the harvesters. On the bridge of the UN's Fury, Captain Marcus Cole watched the harvester growing larger on his display. His ship was damaged. Half his weapons were offline. 30 of his crew were dead, but he was still flying and he still had engines. All hands, he announced over the intercom. Brace for impact. It has been an honor serving with you. The Fury hit the harvester at full speed, but it did not simply crash. At the last moment, Captain Cole fired every remaining weapon directly into the harvester's shield generator. The explosion was massive, blinding, terrible. When the light faded, both ships were gone, but the harvester's shields had failed, and the 3 warships behind the Fury poured fire into the exposed hull. The harvester broke apart, scattering debris across the battlefield. 1 ship, 1 human crew. They had traded their lives to kill something 1,000 times their size, and they were not alone. Across the battlefield, human ships fought with desperate fury. Crews worked 18-hour shifts without rest. Wounded soldiers refused to leave their posts. Engineers repaired damage while battles raged around them, often getting injured again before they could finish. Vorak watched in disbelief as his harvester fleet, the pride of the Krath Dominion, was torn apart by 48 small ships and the stubborn creatures inside them. Why will they not stop? He whispered. Why will they not die? A dying Krath scout sent a final transmission from deep within the battle zone. He had managed to scan the human ships to access their historical databases. Supreme Commander, the scout gasped, his voice breaking up. I understand now. These creatures, their planet. It tried to kill them every day of their existence. Whether that destroyed cities, predators that hunted them in the dark, diseases that wiped out millions, and they survived. They survived everything. Impossible, Vorak said. Nothing survives a death world. They did more than survive. They conquered their planet. They tamed it. They turned its dangers into strengths. The scout's voice grew weaker. And then they had nothing left to fight except each other. So they did. For thousands of years, war after war after war. The transmission crackled with static. We thought we were predators. We thought we were the hunters. But these humans, they have more experience with death than we have with life. We are not fighting a species. We are fighting a force of nature. The transmission ended. The scout was gone. Vorak looked at the battlefield. His fleet was still larger. He still had more ships. But the momentum had shifted. The Krath were no longer attacking. They were defending. They were retreating. They were dying. All ships, he said, and his voice sounded hollow even to himself. Fall back. Regroup outside the system. His officers stared at him in shock. Supreme Commander, we have never retreated. In 10,000 years, the Krath have never... I know what we have never done, Vorak roared. But we have also never faced Deathworlders. Today we learn a new lesson. The Krath fleet began to withdraw. Behind them, the human ships did not pursue. They had one. Against impossible odds, they had one. On the bridge of the Defiance, Admiral Helena Vance allowed herself to breathe. Status report, she ordered. We have lost 11 ships, her tactical officer replied. 2,347 personnel killed, but the Krath are retreating. Sonari Prime is secure. Helena closed her eyes. 2,000 lives. Good men and women who had followed her into battle and would never go home. But millions of Sonari were still alive because of their sacrifice. Send a message to the Sonari government, Helena said. Tell them the skies are clear. Tell them they are safe. Tell them, she thought silently, that humanity keeps its promises. The battle was over, but the work was not done. Admiral Helena Vance stood in the ruins of what had once been a beautiful Sonari city. The Krath harvesters had torn through this place, leaving nothing but dust and broken stone. But among the ruins, life was returning. Human medical teams moved through the wreckage, treating wounded Sonari civilians. Human engineers worked alongside Sonari workers to restore power to the remaining buildings. Human soldiers stood guard at the edges of the city, watching the skies for any sign of the Krath returning. The Sonari had never seen anything like it. These strange, scarred creatures from a death world had crossed the galaxy to save them. They had fought and died for people they had never met, and now they were staying to help rebuild. Ambassador Velitra approached Admiral Vance. Her glow had returned, stronger than before. It shifted through colors that Helena's translator identified as gratitude, wonder, and something like reverence. Admiral Velitra said softly, I do not have words. In all the languages of the Sonari people, there is no way to express what we feel. Helena looked at the medical tent nearby. A young human medic was showing a group of Sonari children how to fold paper into the shape of a bird. The children were fascinated, their small hands glowing with excitement as they tried to copy the movements. You do not need words, Helena said. We did not come here for thanks. We came here because it was the right thing to do. But why? Velitra asked. This question has been burning in my mind since you arrived. Your planet is so far from ours. We have nothing to offer you. We are not powerful or wealthy or important. Why would humans risk everything for strangers? Helena was quiet for a long moment. She watched her crew working, sweating, bleeding for people who were not their own. She thought about the 2,300 souls who would never see Earth again. When I was young, Helena finally said, my grandmother told me stories about our history. Terrible stories. Times when one group of humans would hurt another, and the rest of the world would do nothing. They would watch from a distance and say it was not their problem. They would send thoughts and prayers instead of help. They would find reasons to look away. She turned to face the ambassador. Those stories haunted me. They haunt all of us. We carry the shame of those moments in our blood. We remember every time we failed to act, every time we chose safety over justice. So you fight to erase that shame. No, the shame will never be erased. But we can choose to be different now. We can choose to be the ones who show up when everyone else is looking away. Helena's voice grew firm. We will never remove those dark chapters from our history, but we can write new ones, better ones. Velitra's glow shifted to deep violet. You are strange creatures, violent and gentle at the same time, terrifying and kind. We contain contradictions, Helena agreed. We are capable of great evil and great good. We have learned that the only way to become better is to keep trying, to keep choosing the good when it would be easier to choose nothing at all. Far away, the news of the Battle of Sonari Prime spread across the galaxy. It traveled through communication networks and trading posts and diplomatic channels. Within days, every spacefaring species had heard the story. The Krath, the unstoppable harvesters, had been defeated, not by a coalition of great powers, not by superior technology or overwhelming numbers. They had been defeated by 48 ships from a death world no one had paid attention to. The reaction was immediate and dramatic. The Villani, who had politely refused to help the Sonari, suddenly became very interested in establishing trade relations with Earth. They sent diplomatic messages expressing their deep admiration for human courage and their hope for future. Cooperation, the Mindari, who had offered only prayers, began inviting human philosophers to study at their great temples. They said they wanted to understand the spiritual nature of beings who would die for strangers. The crystalline accord, who had promised to discuss the matter in 6 months, held an emergency session that lasted only 3 hours. At the end of it, they voted unanimously to accept humanity's application for Galactic Union membership. The vote had been pending for 50 years. Suddenly, everyone was eager to welcome the Deathworlders, and in the dark spaces between stars, other predator species watched the recordings of the battle. They studied the human tactics. They analyzed the human weapons. They read the reports of human endurance and adaptability and sheer stubborn refusal to give up. Then they made a quiet, collective decision. Whatever worlds they planned to harvest next, those worlds would be far, far away from human space. Very far away on Earth. Life continued as it always had. The morning news mentioned the battle briefly, between stories about local politics and celebrity gossip. Most humans never learned the details of what had happened at Sonari Prime. They went to work, raised their children, complained about the weather, and dreamed their small and precious dreams. They did not know that their species had just announced itself to the galaxy. They did not know that 1,000 alien civilizations were now watching them with a mixture of fear and hope. They did not know that their navy had just rewritten the rules of galactic politics, but somewhere in a small apartment on a quiet street, an old woman watched the news report and smiled. Her name was Maria Vance, and her granddaughter was an admiral. She had given Helena those stories about humanity's dark past. She had taught her that courage meant standing up for the helpless, even when it was hard. "That is my girl," she whispered to the screen. "That is my Helena." On Sonari Prime, the rebuilding continued. Human and Sonari worked side by side, building something new from the ashes of destruction. Ambassador Velitra watched them and felt something she had never felt before. It was more than gratitude. It was more than hope. It was the beginning of a friendship that would change the galaxy forever and across the stars. In languages both human and alien, a new phrase entered the common vocabulary. It was whispered in trading posts and shouted in council chambers. It was written in reports and carved into monuments. Some said it as a warning. Some said it as a promise. But everyone who heard it understood its meaning. Never threaten the gentle ones. The Deathworlders are watching. Admiral Helena Vance never sought fame or glory. She returned to Earth after the rebuilding was complete, retired from the Navy, and spent her remaining years teaching young cadets at the Academy. When they asked her about the Battle of Sonari Prime, she always gave the same answer. "We did not do anything special. We just showed up when it mattered." Anyone could do that. The hard part is choosing to care. And in her heart, she hoped they were listening.